My name is Taryn. I remember the morning like fire in my nose, smoke from the pine wood, the last crackle of meat fat on stone, and my brother Arrow laughing as he checked his arrows. He had always laughed too loud, too freely, even when our bellies were empty, even when the wolves sang from the cliffs. That morning, the frost had settled into every crack of the world. The bark of the trees wore white coats, and the breath from our mouths came out in heavy plumes. Arrow's laugh cut through it all, like it refused to freeze. He wore his hunting furs loose, never worried about the cold, said it made him sharper. Mother gave us dried roots and a piece of smoked hare. We shared it without words. No one spoke much before a hunt. Words could steal luck. She kissed Arrow on the forehead, but not me. I was too old for that now. Still, I saw the way her fingers lingered near his cheek, like she was trying to memorize the shape of his face. We were six, me, Arrow, Var the heavy one, Lynn with her two dogs, old Haru who never missed a shot, and Keg who always carried more than he needed. We moved in a single line down the ridge, the way Father taught us, feet soft on stone, eyes open. The air smelled of wet bark and the faint sour trace of fox urine. Birds didn't sing that morning, not a single one. Before we left, Father stood by the edge of the camp. His face was still as a mask, but I could see something tight in his eyes. He'd once been the strongest of us all. His spear was legend. Now his joints ached too much, and his back bent like old birch. I had seen him try to stretch in the mornings, hiding the pain. Still, no one dared take his place by the fire. "Bring back more than tracks this time," he said. His voice was low, but it carried. Arrow smirked and clapped me on the shoulder. "We'll bring back half a forest, right, little brother?" That was the last thing Father said to Arrow. That was the last time I saw them both breathing. The forest swallowed us slowly, as it always did. First the wind died, then the sounds of camp fell away. Then even our own footsteps began to sound like someone else's. Each tree looked older than the last, covered in lichen that glowed pale green. Somewhere far off, a branch cracked. We stopped breathing, listening. Nothing followed. We followed a set of deer prints down past a frozen creek. Arrow led, bow ready, body loose as a cat. I watched the way his back moved, relaxed, like he belonged there, like nothing could ever touch him. I used to feel that way, not anymore. At midday, we found blood in the snow. A rabbit, half-eaten, throat torn by something with many teeth. Arrow knelt beside it. "Fresh," he said. "Something else is hunting." We moved slower after that. The light grew strange, thick and yellow like old fat. I remember thinking we should turn back, but no one said it. No one wanted to be the one who feared the trees. Lynn's dogs growled once, near a cluster of rocks, but when we searched, there was nothing. Just claw marks in the bark of a tree. High, too high for a wolf. By dusk, we hadn't caught anything but cold and silence. Var slipped and cursed. Haru slapped him quiet. We waited, breathless, for the sound to carry. But the woods stayed still. That's when Arrow disappeared. He had gone ahead around a bend in the path, chasing movement. "I saw it," he shouted. Then the thump of feet running. Then nothing. We waited. We called his name. Lynn sent her dogs, but they returned alone, whining. Night fell like a stone. We lit no fire. The cold gnawed our bones, and fear sank deep. I stared at the place he vanished for so long my eyes hurt. I kept thinking he'd come back out, smiling, with a deer slung over his shoulders. But he didn't. We argued. Haru wanted to leave and return at dawn. Keg wanted to keep searching. I stayed silent, heart burning. In the end, we split. Haru and Lynn went back to camp. The rest of us stayed. And I prayed to whatever spirit still listened that my brother was only lost.
We made camp with nothing but darkness around us. The trees huddled like watchers, and every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. Var tried to joke, but no one laughed. Keg chewed on bark. I just stared at the fireless pit and thought of Ero's face, his smirk, his eyes always half full of mischief. We waited until dawn. I didn't sleep. I just watched the sky change from black to gray. As soon as we could see our hands again, we retraced our steps. Snow had fallen lightly in the night, softening all signs, but the memory of where Ero vanished was burned in me. There, beneath a crooked birch, I found his footprint, deep, the last one. After that, nothing. We searched in spirals. Var shouted. Keg called his name over and over until it didn't sound like a name anymore. I walked the same circle 10 times. I found snapped branches, disturbed snow, but no blood, no gear, no body. By midday, Keg sat down and refused to rise. His face was pale, lips cracked. "He's gone," he whispered. "Something took him, or he walked away. Either way, he's not here." I wanted to hit him, but he was right. We had to return. Haru would have told the elders by now. Our mother would be waiting. Father. We crossed the river again in silence. The frost was thicker. I felt older. When camp came into view, smoke already rose. Relief hit me, brief, like a trick. Then I saw the people gathered, the stillness, the way they stood in a wide ring near the longhouse, and I knew something else had happened. I ran before the others. My legs moved without thought. I pushed through the ring. And there, in the earth-darkened snow, lay my father. On his side, mouth open, eyes half closed. An arrow stood from his chest, flint head, dark shaft. And I knew that arrow. It was Ero's. It was one we carved together. It was one I had shaped with my own hands. I staggered back, the cold leaving my limbs. Someone pulled me away. Voices murmured, none making sense. My mother's wail came late, too late. She had already known. That night, I sat by the cold ashes. No one dared build a fire. They feared spirits now, or maybe each other. Haru stood watch. Keg avoided my eyes. Var whispered of curses. I held the arrow after they removed it. My hands bled on the flint. My stomach heaved, but nothing came. Someone said Ero returned, that he did this, that he ran again. But I didn't believe it. Not yet. I buried the arrow under the oldest tree in camp. Then I went to sleep, if it can be called that, and dreamed of my brother standing in the trees, silent, watching, vanishing. We made camp with nothing but darkness around us. The trees huddled like watchers, and every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. Var tried to joke, but no one laughed. Keg chewed on bark. I just stared at the fireless pit and thought of Arrow's face, his smirk, his eyes always half full of mischief. We waited until dawn. I didn't sleep. I just watched the sky change from black to gray. As soon as we could see our hands again, we retraced our steps. Snow had fallen lightly in the night, softening all signs, but the memory of where Arrow vanished was burned in me. There, beneath a crooked birch, I found his footprint. Deep, the last one. After that, nothing. We searched in spirals. Var shouted. Keg called his name over and over until it didn't sound like a name anymore. I walked the same circle 10 times. I found snapped branches, disturbed snow, but no blood, no gear, no body. By midday, Keg sat down and refused to rise. His face was pale, lips cracked. "He's gone," he whispered. "Something took him, or he walked away. Either way, he's not here." I wanted to hit him, but he was right. We had to return. Haru would have told the elders by now. Our mother would be waiting. Father. We crossed the river again in silence. The frost was thicker. I felt older. When camp came into view, smoke already rose. Relief hit me, brief, like a trick. Then I saw the people gathered, the stillness.
the way they stood in a wide ring near the longhouse. And I knew something else had happened. I ran before the others. My legs moved without thought. I pushed through the ring. And there, in the earth-darkened snow, lay my father. On his side, mouth open, eyes half closed. An arrow stood from his chest, flint head, dark shaft. And I knew that arrow. It was Arrow's. It was one we carved together. It was one I had shaped with my own hands. I staggered back, the cold leaving my limbs. Someone pulled me away. Voices murmured, none making sense. My mother's wail came late, too late. She had already known. That night, I sat by the cold ashes. No one dared build a fire. They feared spirits now, or maybe each other. Haru stood watch. Keg avoided my eyes. Var whispered of curses. I held the arrow after they removed it. My hands bled on the flint. My stomach heaved, but nothing came. Someone said Arrow returned, that he did this, that he ran again. But I didn't believe it. Not yet. I buried the arrow under the oldest tree in camp. Then I went to sleep, if it can be called that, and dreamed of my brother standing in the trees, silent, watching, vanishing.
I didn't go to the morning meal. I sat by the old tree, where the earth still bore signs of my digging. The arrow I buried there whispered like a ghost in my head. I could still feel the weight of it in my hands, the texture of the fletching, stiff with blood. I tried to forget the way it looked in Father's chest, but that image was carved into me like a mark on stone. The camp was different now. People walked slower, eyes down. The usual calls and banter that filled the cold air were gone. Even the dogs were quiet. Only the crows dared speak, and their caws sounded like accusations. Mother didn't leave the longhouse. She refused food. She lit no fires. She just sat, a shape in the shadows, holding one of Father's old fur wraps. No one dared speak to her, not even the elders. I sharpened my knife with a stone that day, not because it needed it, just for the rhythm. The scrape, scrape, scrape kept my hands busy while my mind wandered in dangerous circles. People started looking at me differently. They didn't say it out loud, but I saw it, in their eyes, in the way they paused when passing me, in the way they clutched their children close. My brother was missing, my father was dead, the arrow was ours, and I was the last to see both. Keg came to me before the sun set. He didn't sit, just stood there with arms crossed. "They want you to leave," he said. "Not forever, just until things clear." I laughed, short and bitter. "You think I killed him?" He looked away. That was answer enough. I didn't argue. That night I packed what I needed: my bow, 6 arrows, dried roots, flint, and the cloak Mother had sewn from mountain goat skin. I left without telling her. I couldn't stand another moment of that silence. I headed east into the woods where we last saw Iroh, where the trees grow close and the sun barely touches the floor, where the roots twist like veins. I didn't have a plan, just questions. The snow was deeper than before. I followed old tracks, faded now, animal paths. Branches snapped weeks ago. Everything led nowhere, but still I walked. The second night I found a circle of stones blackened with old ash. Someone had made fire here, not long ago. I sifted the cold stones with my fingers, found a charred bit of fur. Rabbit, maybe, maybe not. That night I dreamed again. Iro stood at the edge of the trees, half in shadow. He didn't speak, just looked at me. I reached out to him and woke with snow on my face. The next day, I found footprints. Not mine, not animal. Human. Barefoot, which made no sense. No one walked barefoot in this cold. But there they were, pressed into the snow like pressed leaves. Wide, deep. I followed them for hours. They wove through the trees, crossed frozen streams, looped in strange patterns. No destination, just wandering, or maybe watching. At dusk, I found something hanging from a tree. A necklace of teeth. Wolf teeth. I counted 7. Iro had 7 wolves to his name. He wore their teeth when we hunted, but this wasn't his necklace. The cord was wrong, too clean, too new. Someone made it after. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by a small fire, back to a rock wall, bow in hand. I thought I heard breathing in the dark once, twice, but no one came. At dawn, I found a single arrow leaning against the rock, stuck upright in the snow. Flint tip, dark shaft, fletching rough. One of ours. It hadn't been there when I slept. Who left it? That was when I began to truly feel hunted. Not by beast, by something that knew me, by something that remembered. I took the arrow, kept it. If Iro was alive, he was near. If he wasn't, then someone wore his face, and I would find out who.
On the 5th day of my wandering, I stumbled across smoke again, thin, gray, barely clinging to the sky. Not from a forest fire, not from lightning. This was a cooking fire, controlled, made by hands. I crouched low and crept toward the smell. Charred meat, bitter wood, and something sweet. Not berries, something rotten, like a fruit gone too long. My stomach turned before I saw anything. Through the trees, I spotted the camp. Just a ring of stones, some skins strung between branches, and a dying fire. No one visible, but something had been there, recently. Then I heard it, soft chanting, low and steady, like breath through cracked lips. I dropped flat and crawled closer, inch by inch, until I saw him. Not Iro. A man, cloaked in furs that didn't match. Wolf, bear, deer, all patched together. His face was smeared with ash. He rocked back and forth beside the fire, hands cupped around something he whispered to. I couldn't see what it was. I waited, watched. The wind shifted. He froze. His head turned sharply, and for a heartbeat, I thought he looked straight at me. But he didn't move, just went still as stone. I stayed there until night came. When he finally left the fire, disappearing into the woods, I crept closer. What he had been holding was still there, a bundle of fur. I reached out, slowly, and pulled it open. Inside was an idol, made of bone and hide. Its face was carved to look like a man, but wrong. Its eyes too deep, its mouth a line with no end. Around its neck were teeth, 7. I backed away, cold sweat soaking my chest. This man, he had Iro's trophies, but he wasn't Iro. I left the camp quietly and walked until my legs nearly collapsed. That night, I built no fire. Instead, I remembered. Iro had once told me a story, long ago, about a man who stole the spirits of beasts, who wore their skins and walked like them. He said the man lived in the deep woods, past the frost line, that he could take the face of anyone he saw die. I had laughed, said it was a story for children, but now, with those teeth, with that idol, I wasn't so sure. When I returned to the fire circle the next day, it was gone. No stones, no furs, not even a trace of ash. The forest had swallowed it. That night, as I sat shivering beneath a pine, I heard voices. Not close, but not far. One of them laughed, and it was Eero's laugh. The next morning, I followed the laughter. It was a cruel thing to chase, that sound. It echoed through the pines, bending in ways that made it impossible to tell where it came from. Sometimes it was near, sometimes far, sometimes above me, as if the trees themselves laughed. But I knew the sound. I had grown up with it. Eero's laugh was like a stream, bright, cutting, and impossible to ignore. I moved through the forest without eating. My limbs ached, my lips cracked, but my heart beat faster than fear. I was no longer following a trail of tracks. I was following instinct, that sharp, ancient pull in the gut that leads a wolf to prey, or a brother to truth. I passed stones arranged in spirals, bones tied to branches, a circle of dead birds, each beak facing inward, symbols, warnings, or invitations. I couldn't tell. The deeper I went, the less the forest looked like itself. The trees grew twisted, leaning away from something unseen. Moss clung to bark like wounds. There was a silence here that screamed. Then I found it, a hollow, a break in the earth covered with roots and brush. Not a cave, not a burrow, a space, a hiding place. I felt it before I saw it, the cold pulling at my skin like breath. I approached slowly. Inside, it was dark, too dark, like the sun had never touched it. I stepped inside, and the air changed, heavy, wet, the smell of rot and iron. Something moved. I froze. A figure sat in the center, back to me. It was him, Eero, or something that wore his shape. He turned slowly. His face was pale, thinner than I remembered, his eyes sunken. But they were his. "Taran," he said, like no time had passed. I didn't speak. "You shouldn't have come." Still, I said nothing. He stood, joints cracking. He looked older, wilder, not just from the forest, from something deeper. "I didn't kill him," he said. I looked down. He held something in his hand, a carved bone, just like the idol, just like the one from the man by the fire. "Then who did?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer and placed the idol between us. "They watch now," he whispered. "They've always watched." My hand found the hilt of my knife. "Who?" He smiled, broken, sad. "The ones who take faces. The ones Father warned us about. You just didn't listen." He turned and vanished into the dark. I followed, but the hollow was empty. No footprints, no scent, no warmth. Just the idol, and my breath fogging in the air. I stumbled out into the daylight, blinking. The world looked wrong now, smaller, brittle. Had I seen a ghost? A memory? Or the truth? That night, I climbed a tree and watched the woods. I didn't sleep. I listened. And just before dawn, I saw them. Shapes walking through the trees, wearing skins, faces blank, moving silently. One of them stopped and looked up at me. It wore Eero's face, and it smiled. I waited in that tree until the sky went from black to bruised purple. My eyes burned, my limbs ached, but I didn't come down. Not until the last shadow passed beneath the trees, vanishing into the mist like smoke. When I finally dropped to the ground, the forest felt different, lighter maybe, or emptier. I turned toward camp, toward home. Each step was harder than the last. I arrived at dusk 3 days later. My boots were cracked, my knees bruised. The wind bit through my cloak, but I was whole. The camp was not. The fire pit had been scattered, tents torn, tools left in the snow. It wasn't abandoned, no, it was wounded, like something had passed through it and scraped its claws along every soul.
Lynn saw me first. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just walked up and wrapped her arms around me like she thought I might vanish too. "We thought you were dead," she whispered. "Not yet," I said. Keg was gone. They said he wandered into the woods 2 nights ago, said he heard Eero's voice and followed it. No one followed him. Mother was still alive. She looked older than the mountains. Her voice cracked when she said my name, but she smiled. The elders gathered that night, and I stood before them. I told them everything, about the hollow, about the face-wearers, about Eero. Nog didn't believe me, neither did most, but one did, Haru. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Did you see the mark?" he asked. I nodded. The idol, the face, the eyes, too deep. He closed his eyes, whispered something. Then he stood. "We burn the woods," he said. "We end it." But I said no. There are things in there that fire can't touch. You'll only wake them deeper. The clan argued. Some wanted to run, others to fight. In the end, they did nothing. Fear freezes more than frost. That night, as I sat by what remained of the fire, Lynn sat beside me. "Do you think he's still your brother?" she asked. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that he wore Eero's face. And he smiled like Eero did once. And that the arrow in Father's chest was real. In the morning, I found Prince again, leading away from camp, barefoot, 7 sets. The prince led east, away from the cliffs, past the river's bend where no hunter ever walked. I followed. Snow softened the sound of my steps, but my breath was loud. Fear turned every pine shadow into a watcher. I gripped my bow until my knuckles cracked. The others stayed behind, even Haru. No one wanted to know what waited in that direction. But I had to, for Eero, for Father, for the arrow. I found the first body at dusk. Not torn, not eaten, just lying flat in the snow, eyes open. A boy from the southern tent. His chest was marked, not with wounds, but with symbols cut shallow, spirals, lines, a face drawn in blood. He wasn't cold yet. The next was Keg. I knew him by the boots. Same marks, same stillness. They weren't just dying, they were being used, offered. I built no fire that night. I climbed into a tree and watched the forest breathe. And just before moonrise, I saw them again. 7, moving between trees, not fast, not human, faces that shifted like smoke. Some looked like people I knew. One looked like Eero, one like Father. They circled below me, then stopped, and one spoke. "Why do you watch, Taran?" My heart stopped. It was my voice. I didn't answer, couldn't. Another stepped forward. "He belongs to us now, you too." Then they were gone. I climbed down at dawn, shaking. I didn't return to camp. I turned west, far, far west, until I found a cave I remembered from my youth, a place where Father taught me to trap. There I stayed. Days turned to weeks. The prince never came that far, but their memory did. Every time I carved an arrow, I saw his face. Every time I lit a fire, I waited for them to circle. One night, I dreamed of Father. He stood over me, his chest whole, his eyes soft. "You know now," he said. "Know what?" He didn't answer. I woke with tears frozen on my cheek. Years passed. I returned to the camp one winter, or what was left, empty, collapsed, trees growing through the bones of our shelters. No sign of Eero, no sign of the others, just silence.
and the wind whispering my name. Now when I carve arrows, I always leave one imperfect, a silent tooth chipped and black, a reminder that truth hunts in silence, that blood runs deeper than memory, and that some faces, some laughs, we should never follow into the woods. The arrow is still with me, so is the choice. I still don't know if Eero killed our father, but I know something else wore his skin, and it is still watching.